Hello, welcome to Inspire in Half an Hour podcast. My name is Ruth Aisi, and this time I have an inspiring and soothing chat with Michelle Sintaa Morna, who is a yoga and meditation instructor. Michelle has already done a lot in her life. However, in my chat with her, I focus on the yoga and meditation sessions that she's given for over 8 years in Mozambique and since COVID to students all over the world. She's currently studying yoga therapy.
I have done many different things in my life, but I've come to realize that for some reason, all of them had to be the way that they were. Like I've sort of managed to extract some skill from each and every one of the things that I've done that have culminated in what I'm doing now, which is I've been studying yoga therapy, and I'm now full-time teaching yoga, meditation, and therapy techniques to students around the world, and really moving much more onto the online platforms. Of course, since COVID, many of us who were in the yoga teaching realm had to kind of step up our technical skills and get onto the internet because all of a sudden we couldn't see each other face to face, and we needed this, I suppose, a relief from the mundane everyday life and being sort of stuck inside and stuck with ourselves, right? We needed to have techniques to deal with what comes up when you are sitting alone and in the quiet.
Yes.
I came to realize that I had sort of been skating on the surface level of the yoga for about 8 years. At that point, I'd been teaching for 8 years. And yes, many of the things had been useful to me, I could see in those 8 years improvements in my capacity to, or shall I say my resilience, improvements in my resilience as a human being, and my capacity to empathize with other people, in my capacity to react with a bit more softness, not directly from my ego and defensiveness and all of that. But truthfully, I had just scratched the surface level. And that was because I was going on these sort of very, very shallow bits of information that you pick up here and there from random people who you've learned from, or have been teaching you. And when I started this first module of the yoga therapy course, we went straight into meditation. And that was a revelation for me. We started with meditation because my teacher really believes that if you would like to be a therapist, you have to practice on yourself first.
Yes.
You have to do the therapy on you.
Yes.
And then you're able to give someone a genuine, authentic assistance. So we dove straight into still meditation practice. And that has been such a big eye-opener for me, because I think that for many years I had a misunderstanding of what meditation was. Although I was a meditation teacher, I was teaching meditation for 8 years, and I had not really understood the depth of the magic, the power of meditation, because I had just been taking these little tidbits from random teachers who I had met along my path. And what I came to realize through that experience was what most people talk about as meditation is not actually technically meditation. People, yes, people will use the word meditation to refer to exercises where we visualize, where we use our imagination to see ourselves, generally, of course, in a sort of calming, tranquil environment. We visualize things that help us to calm our nervous system, which is healthy, of course. It's a wonderful thing to do, but it's not meditation.
I mean, also, I felt the benefit. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, in terms of the meditation, I remember, and yoga, I remember you gave me the best yoga class I've ever had, which was in Mozambique. And that was a few years ago. And you're saying that at that time you hadn't really grasped it, but or the full extent or the power of meditation. But I must say, afterwards, I really did feel very calm, and it was when I really got it, and I also found it not at all irritating, which other yoga teachers, I sometimes have found it and it's put me off. So, even then, I do feel actually you really had it at that point. So I'm interested to hear how, what you're saying, that you've got even better, because it was just an amazing experience for me.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Auntie.
I mean, people who are listening probably are going to yoga classes, which are more the typical yoga classes, where you're saying they're not getting the full benefit. So how do you know?
Maybe it would be useful for us to practice a visualization now, for us to have a better understanding of how the mind operates. And from there, will be easier to answer this question.
Okay.
So everyone who's listening, if you are able to, maybe close your eyes.
Yes.
For just this next 5 minutes. But if you would like to, if you're driving or doing something where you need to have your eyes open, it's also fine to try and visualize this with your eyes open.
Okay.
So we're going to just imagine a little miniature version of yourself sitting on the edge of a lake right now.
Okay.
So just visualize.
With my eyes closed now. Yes.
You can close your eyes, yes, if you'd like to. Visualize this little miniature version of Ruth just calmly sitting at the edge of a lake. And you can imagine the lake very large and also very still. So still that the surface of the water actually looks like thick oil. When the surface is so still that it's kind of shiny and thick. And then imagine that behind your back, there's a really big sun. It's just shining this beautiful warm light on your back. Very comfortable. And because the sun is shining on this very still lake, you can see in the water a strong reflection of the sun. In fact, the surface of the lake looks bright white because you can see the reflection of the bright sun so clearly on the still surface. Now imagine that you can get up and you walk into the water and you decide to swim down. And you're swimming down and swimming down. Let's imagine that we can breathe underwater so that we're very comfortable there. As you're swimming down into the lake, the first few meters of the lake are a little bit illuminated by the light, so you can see a bit. But as you swim further and further down, it becomes more dark. It's your lake, you're safe there. So you continue to swim down. Perhaps you need to switch on a little torch now because it's too dark to see with your bare eyes. And at the bottom of this lake, looking around with your torch, you can see a big ship. Big ship, like Titanic size. A ship that has sunken and is resting in the bed of the lake. And inside this big ship are all the stuff of all the people who were on the ship. All the suitcases and the dresses and the coats. In the kitchen, all the cups and the plates and cutlery, all the furniture, all the big metal pieces that make up the ship, all sitting there. Now let's imagine that at the bottom of the lake, a sort of tremor happens. The bottom of the lake starts to shake. And from the bottom of the lake comes up some stuff, some debris from this sunken ship. And it floats up to the surface of the water. Some suitcases and a coat and one cup and a few plates. They're all now floating at the surface of the lake. So imagine now that you come back to sit on the edge of the lake and you're observing now that there are suitcases and stuff on the surface of the lake, bobbing up and down, they're creating little ripples on the surface. And those ripples are interacting with one another. So it creates a lot of chaos on the surface of the lake. Now, when you look at the reflection in the water, what do you see? Well, you see lots of little patches of light. And these little patches of light that are reflections of the sun, they're constantly moving. They appear to be one place, and then very quickly they move to another place, and then another, and then another. They appear to be very small patches of light. All right, so now you can open your eyes, and we'll just talk about what we saw there.
Ah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
So, yes?
No, I found it actually very relaxing.
To visualize what it's like inside your mind. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, it took me out of having to worry about the podcast and what I was going to ask you next. I just went with it, and it did give me space to just sort of like be in a different place, basically.
I think it's a wonderful thing when we can observe our mind from a distance in that way, you know?
Yeah, interesting.
So what I'm sort of describing, I came up with this visualization as an entry point into my meditation courses so that people can understand what we're doing when we meditate.
Yes.
So in this visualization, the little miniature you is that part of your mind that is wise and capable of discernment. We call that in Sanskrit buddhi, the same word that one uses to talk about Buddhism or the Buddha. It's the same root word. It's this wise, discerning part of yourself that has the capacity to see into your mind, but also to connect with your spirit, with that part of yourself that is eternal and unaffected by the day-to-day humdrum of life.
Yes.
So in this visualization, the sun represents your spirit, represents that part of you that is always blissful, always shining, always capable of giving light and warmth, shining in 360 degrees. You know, the sun doesn't say, I'll shine on this plant, but not this one. I'll give some light and warmth to this person, but not this one. That is how our spirit is. It's capable of this 360 degrees light and shining and warmth and blissfulness all the time. And just like the sun, it's always there. Even when the sun sets, we know that it's still there and it's coming again, right? So the lake represents the surface of your mind. So on the surface of the lake, it's bright, it's illuminated. This is our conscious mind. It's the stuff that we can see and we know is there. When you swim a little bit down under the surface of the mind, the first few meters is slightly illuminated by the sun. And so you can see a bit. That is like our subconscious mind. And you swim even further down and the bottom of the lake is dark. And that part of the mind is our unconscious mind. Western psychologists suggest that constitutes 95% of the mind. And that the subconscious and the conscious mind represent just 5% of the mind. So now I said that underneath the lake, there's this big ship, and the ship is like the storage of all your experiences, all the memories that you have from childhood, from your teenagehood, from your life. And because yoga comprises this belief that we are affected by what happened to our ancestors, we also say that in that ship is all the stuff of your parents and their parents, the parents' parents and the parents' parents' parents. So many passengers on this Titanic. And all of them have their suitcases, and all of them are there in your unconscious mind. Now, when the floor of the bed of the lake shakes, tremors, I would say that's something like a trigger moment. It's something like, when you have a moment in your life that shakes you up.
Yes, yes.
Stuff gets loose from underneath, from in that ship, and it floats up to the surface of the water, to your conscious mind. And those things, those suitcases of all the experiences that you had, or maybe of your ancestors' experiences, they bob up and down on the surface of your mind, and they create a fluctuation on the mind. They create these ripples on the surface of your mind. Those ripples, in Sanskrit, we have a word for that called vritti. So these ripples on the mind are the energy that create thoughts. When we sit down and we look at the surface of our minds, it appears as if things are chaotic, because there are many thoughts on top of one another, speaking over each other, many voices at the same time in the mind. And that's natural. All of us have the same condition. All of us have been perpetuating that illusion for our entire lives. So when we look at the surface of the mind with that chaos, we don't see a calm reflection of our spirit.
No.
What we see are little patches of this light, little patches of my bliss. So we get confused. We think, oh, there's my happiness. Oh gosh, it's moved. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. There it is. Oh gosh, no, there it's gone again. Oh, there it is. Oh, I think I found it. And just like this, we are chasing the light within us all the time, and not realizing that trying to chase after these little patches of light is an endless game, and it's an illusion, because the reality is the surface of my mind, the reflection, is not me. What is me is that big sun. If I can realize that, if I can turn around and finally see that, all this time I was simply looking at a mirror, I was looking at a reflection. That's not me. This is me. And then you look up at that bright sun, and you know that ever blissful 360 degrees of warmth and light in all directions to all beings is actually me. Then I don't have to go chasing my light anymore. I don't have to chase my happiness anymore. So you asked before this very, very long explanation, where to start? Well, where to start is to realize I am thinking thoughts. Because when you realize that I am thinking thoughts, you start to make that very clear definition, that line between thoughts that are not me, they are simply an energy, an emanation from the tool of my mind that I can utilize or I can discard, and me who is the one who is observing, who is witnessing, who is watching, who is listening, without judgment, without a need, without a wanting, without desires, simply observing. So the base point where to start is to notice I am thinking a thought.
Do you have to be in a good place to do this? I'm trying to think, for example, if you're in a situation of, a country where there's insecurity, war, is it as easy to get into this sort of mindset as it is if you're sitting, for example, in a sunny environment, or where everything is calm and everywhere is peaceful and you've got no stress?
Firstly, when you're in that environment where your external world is chaotic, causing you a lot of pain and suffering, causing you a lot of anxiety and stress and fear, that moment is when you need this more than ever before. You need this. It's not even a question of should I or shouldn't I,
Yes.
If you don't have this, you will not survive that kind of environment, right?
Yes.
So we need it. The second thing is, even though it appears as if our external world creates or fosters or is the source of our feeling within us. That's actually not true. Why do I say that? Well, it is absolutely, I think we've all experienced this. It is absolutely possible to experience pleasure, but to suffer with that. And it is absolutely possible to experience pain and to not suffer with that. All of us have had the experience where pleasure is a punishment and pain is soothing. So we all know that that is actually the idea that a painful experience equals suffering and a non-painful experience equals not suffering. We know that this is not true because we've all experienced the opposite. It does happen.
Can you give examples either from your own experience or from, just so everyone's on the same
page? You meet someone who you love very strongly, and you decide to commit to them and give them your love. You have the pleasure of having that love, of having that experience of love, yet you have the pain of knowing that you might lose them. You have the suffering of all that is created in your life because of the fear that this external thing will go away and I won't have it anymore and I will suffer because of this.
Yes, yeah.
Similarly, on the other side of things, an example of suffering that actually brings you pleasure. Some people who are very religious, for example, and they decide to fast. You have the suffering of feeling the pain of the hunger. Yet there's such a contentment and pleasure and satisfaction in knowing your purpose of doing that. When we stop depending on external things to be the source of our happiness, that is when we finally relieve ourselves from the pain of suffering.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah.
So in that visualization, I said to you, the sun, the reason why we use the sun as a representation of our spirit is because it's always there. Yes. It has an infinite quantity of light and love and warmth to give. And it gives to every being without judgment, without taking from one and giving to another, right? So when we start to realize that that is my source of my happiness, then I have an endless well. Yes. I'm sure you've in your life met one of those wiser old people who've discovered this. And they just don't need anything because they've discovered that the source of all can be taken from within them. These people are also tireless. They're capable of finding more and more and more energy within them to keep going, despite being maybe in a war zone or maybe in that kind of environment. Yes. I would suggest that maybe it's even more likely to be able to find this within yourself when you are put in an environment where your external world is unappealing.
Yes.
So contrary to what you were saying in your question, I actually think the opposite is true. Yes. Sometimes those pretend pleasures that dangle themselves in front of us in our modern day world that is comfortable and we're constantly avoiding pain, constantly do so many things to avoid pain. In that kind of environment, it's actually less enticing to look within myself to find that source of endless happiness and source of endless blissfulness and source of endless contentment and purpose and being, because I keep getting fooled. I keep getting tricked by this illusion of the light that moves around and I go chasing after it. Perhaps it is also about really remembering or learning to enjoy the simple things, Yes. So essentially the purpose of a yoga therapist is to offer a combination of counseling and work with the body and spirit. So we like to use body, mind, and spirit all together, whereas Western philosophy will focus on counseling and speaking as a way of understanding, knowing thyself and understanding oneself. We believe that if we leave it just on that surface level, we will never dig down to the roots of the beliefs that are creating our dysfunction in ourselves.
Mm.
And we also believe that when we have roots of dysfunction in ourselves, the symptoms appear not just as mental issues, but also as physical ones. So you will see that coming up in physical disease as well as in mental disease. And it all begins at some root of a belief that's in your spirit self, that is in that very deep part of yourself. They are not in a good place mentally. It affects their physical health.
Yes.
But I think that somehow people have not made the reverse connection very easily. So for many people, if you say to them, you could improve your mental health by doing something to your body, they don't really understand that that's possible. So when we speak about doing yoga postures and breathing exercises as a way to cure mental illness, it's like, people are like, no, we need counseling, but actually the two are reciprocal. The body and the mind.
Makes sense.
In fact, in yoga, we don't even call them two separate things. It's called the body mind. It's body mind. It's one thing. It's one thing.
It's not even overlap. It's just
It just is one.
Well, and are you actually? You have clients at the moment, though you're studying. You're having clients, and the clients that are they benefiting from your yoga therapy at the moment, or are you?
Yes,
they are, and obviously you're not going to say, I'm not asking you for the specifics about the clients, but who actually, who are you finding who come to you in sort of assistance?
I think that
around
the natural, yes, around the world. I guess the natural progression of things, being that I'm a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher, is that people who are already my students then inquire about, what is this yoga therapy thing? And then how, if we wanted to do something, how would we do it? I think that actually what I've been able to offer that is maybe a bit different than what people typically would get if they decided to take one-on-one sessions with a yoga teacher is what we call in yoga therapy, or in yoga, we call svajaya. Which it directly translates to mean self-study. Self-study. And it's a process whereby we investigate our habits, our tendencies, our beliefs, our belief systems, where it came from, by using the experiences of failing. So we take examples of particular ways in which we feel that we are not doing well. And what we offer is questions and techniques to be able to poke a little bit, to dig around a little bit when you start to realize, like, the thoughts that are related to me feeling not good enough, me feeling unloved, me feeling guilty, me feeling at my worst. Then you can poke around a little bit there and understand where those things come from. And the self-study can be very useful to help us to relieve and release attachments in ourselves. And as I was explaining long before, identifying with your attachments, identifying with things that are external to me, things that are outside of me, that I rely on to bring me my happiness, is the same as looking at the surface of your mind, seeing all the fluctuations and those little patches of light moving around and chasing the light. When I think to myself that these external things will bring me happiness, and when I don't have them, it will bring me suffering and unhappiness, then I suffer.
Michelle, how did you actually get into yoga? What was it was there a particular moment that made you think, no, I've got to put a stop on this hectic life or this manic way of existing? And do you remember a moment, or was it like a gradual, progression?
I knew that I'd enjoyed dancing and doing gymnastics as a child, and I thought that it was simply a physical exercise. So when I moved to a new country, I moved to Kenya, and I didn't have access to my usual dance classes, I decided to take a yoga class. And for a very long time, for many years after that, I still didn't understand that it was something more than just a sort of calming way to stretch your body. And it's only when I literally, this is what happened. I arrived in Mozambique and I didn't have a job. And I sort of racked my brain. I was like, oh, what can I do? Well, there's no yoga teacher here. Maybe that's a thing. And by luck, I chose to do a teacher training course, even though I had no idea what it was going to be like.
Yes.
And then after that 1 month of the teacher training, I was, it sort of dawned on me like, oh, there's a lot more to this. And then I was hooked. I became so addicted to the scriptures and to, studying and understanding more about what this yoga thing can do for us. And I do believe that it's my calling, and somehow in some past life, I was already doing this, because it feels like a coming home and a recognition to me.
Wow. And so are all your lessons online now? If people want to...
Yes.
And
I do teach asana, the posture practice, at the moment 2 times per week, but I think I will move up to 4 times per week in April. The meditation courses I like to teach as a set course time. The next one will run in May. And I also have a group that meets once a month to sort of check in with where they're at with their meditation. So after they've done the beginner's course, they can start to join those, and we offer self-study topics for people to take home for the month and work with. And yes, I'm also teaching people rituals for the new moon and the full moon. It's not necessarily yoga related, just to keep a track of the cycle of the cycle of release after the full moon, and the cycle of bringing in new things after the new moon every month, to track yourself.
Oh, that's fascinating. Oh, well, I actually do feel it's been quite a calming experience talking to you, because it's helped me, sort of reflect more, and I'm really fascinated by it.
Thank you so much, and you've really also given me the opportunity to share something I'm so passionate about, and I'm always eager to talk more and more about this. So thanks for giving me that space and that platform to share this with a few people around the world.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Michelle.